always knew who Phoenix Wright was, but that was it. I only knew due to him being a pretty iconic character and just hearing his famous objection just throughout my life. But that was really as much as I knew. Of course, I also knew about his fated rival Miles Edgeworth as well, but just barely. The only real experience I had with these characters was from watching a walkthrough on the first game during quarantine, which looking back was 5 years ago. Damn. So I wanted to take a deep dive into the series to see how it holds up and whether or not it's mid or an underrated gem. So this journey starts off with the first game in the Ace Attorney series, Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney. For clarification, I originally played the game on the Nintendo 3DS version, but to record footage of the game, I got the PS4 edition to capture some footage. So if you see me just going through the dialogue real quick, that is why. I actually kind of like the way the sprites look on the 3DS version, as I think I actually prefer it over the PC remaster. I'm not sure what the main differences between the two versions are other than just graphics and a cleaner UI, but if there's anything major, let me know in the comments. Now I'm going to do my overall thoughts on the game first without any spoilers, as I feel spoiling each case takes away one of the main appeals of this game, which is of course the mystery component. So after my thoughts on the game as a whole, I'm going to then give my thoughts on each chapter, what I like and don't like about them. Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney is a special game. It takes the digital novel experience but has the unique gimmick with the trial and investigation sessions. Trials are easily the highlight of this game and is what we build up to during the investigation segments. This makes it to where a lot of the suspense is built up within the player to see how things turn out when a clear answer just isn't there. It also makes investigations feel like they drag a little because I just get so excited to get to the trial. But investigating is also pretty great, and there are a lot of enjoyable moments to be had during them. Here's one of my favorites. However, it can be pretty tedious having to move from place to place so much just to see what's the next person to talk to, especially when you have to travel to another place because you can't go to the place you need to from the current location. It's also hard to tell what you need to do sometimes. I would travel from place to place trying to see what's next, what I need to do, but coming up short. Only to discover I didn't examine a piece of evidence in the background of a location because I missed it. This might be a skill issue, but moments like this did happen to me a little bit. It would also be frustrating trying to present evidence to someone to further the story, but you get their I don't know dialogue, so you gotta spam through the text and try again. I also think scenes where action happens feel really awkward and stiff due to the restrictions of the investigation sections. Here's an example of what I mean. Overall, these aren't the biggest problems, but it does slightly diminish the experience of the game. It just feels outdated in those moments, so I'm curious how the newer games handle this. However, I love the trial moments where you need to call an objection by presenting a piece of evidence. This is the highlight of the game for me, as it's incredibly satisfying to call out a witness testimony on their BS with cold hard facts. It also gets harder to figure out the contradictions in later cases, but if you really turn those gears, you can figure it out, which I like. It never felt like it was unfair that that was the piece of evidence I needed to present, though I would accidentally present the correct evidence but not the exact statement to do so, and would lose health. But nonetheless, trials are easily the best part of Phoenix Wright, which shows how well the game was designed. Another thing which was well designed is the music and sound effects. I truly believe Phoenix Wright has one of the most underrated soundtracks in gaming. There's just so many bangers here. Even right now, I'm still humming beats from the game due to just how catchy they are. The sound effects are also fantastic. Sound effects are something I never really think about when I play games, but I couldn't help but notice how well done they are. The iconic sound effect that happens during oh shoot moments is great. We also have the hold it and objection from Phoenix Wright, which is like, come on, I'm new to this series and I've heard those voice lines so many times. It's just iconic. I know that I said that the trials are the highlight of the game, but honestly, if the characters were bland and uninteresting, then the trials would just fall apart. I can confidently say that there are no characters that I dislike, in terms of just not liking the character for what they are. Of course there are characters I don't like, but that's how they're designed to be, but I still enjoy them for what they bring to the table. And there are some characters I don't have the strongest feelings for, but even so, all the characters are bursting with personality. The cast is so lovable that even the characters I didn't originally care for, I come around to by the end of the game. And the first character I want to talk about is the main character himself, Phoenix Wright. I originally thought that Phoenix would be not necessarily a bland character, but more simple in one note. This was because I thought since the player is playing as Phoenix, the devs would want the player to immerse themselves as Phoenix, kind of like how a silent protagonist work like Link. But Phoenix actually has personality while still achieving that immersion for the characters to live vicariously through, which is a difficult line to balance. I wouldn't say Phoenix is the most complex of characters, far from it, but there's enough meat on the bones with him to truly feel like a human with emotions. Like how he's always a panicking mess before a trial starts, and how he feels like the butt of the courtroom, getting dragged by Edgeworth and even the judge getting on him. But then he always manages to pull through and do so with confidence and takes charge of the trial. When the music starts after a clear contradiction, man, it gets me so hyped. He's also a pretty sassy guy when dealing with Maya or Larry's shenanigans. He's just a great protagonist and serves to make the player invested in him. I have no complaints. I give my thoughts on the rest of the cast when dealing with the cases where they get introduced. So without further ado, let's go case by case and see how they hold up. The first case in this game is fittingly titled The First Turnabout. I'll keep talking about this case brief as I don't have much to say about it since it's a tutorial chapter. The case is very bare bones and easy to figure out to make the player get adjusted to the courtroom battles. Despite it being so simple, it was effective in getting me quickly invested in the game and wanting to continue. I just feel like this tutorial case would be a pain to get through on another playthrough, though it might be quick just to spam through the dialogue. We get introduced to one of the funniest characters in the game, the judge. He doesn't really contribute much in this case, but in every other case, he always gets me rolling. I love how timid and weak he is to Edgeworth and Von Karma, literally letting them run the show. But hey, he locks in when he needs to, and always comes through with the right verdict. We also get introduced to Larry Butts. He's hilarious, not much else to add in. But he gets some great development later on, but we'll touch on that later. We also get introduced to Mia, our mentor, but I'll give my thoughts on her in the next case. But other than that, there's not really much else to add. It's a short and sweet case to get the basics of the game, but the second case, everything really starts to rev up. The second case, Turnabout Sisters, while having more complexity than the first case, is still relatively simple. This is because while not being a tutorial case completely, this is the player's introduction to investigating. I do wish Mia's murderer didn't get spoiled in the opening cutscene, but other than that, this case is pretty good. It's not peak Phoenix Wright yet, but it's getting there. Mia is dead and we have to defend her sister from being found guilty. I got to say, regarding Mia's death,
we do not care.
I mean, we barely get to spend time with her before she died. Though as we come to find out, despite her death, she's far from being out of the story. And as we'll see in the later cases, I kind of feel like she's a Mary Sue. She's there to get Phoenix out of a sticky situation and have him win the day. It was fun the first couple of times, but it got repetitive and felt kind of a lazy way for the writers to have Phoenix solve the case. But even so, despite not caring about her death originally, I did find myself start to like her character and get invested with her. I mean, like I said, she's technically not gone from the story. So, fast forwarding to Turnabout Goodbyes, when Lola takes a pic of the entire crew, we see Mia's spirit in the photo. It's actually really beautiful, and I found myself appreciating Mia as a character way more by the end of the game, which at this point, I wasn't expecting. Maya is also introduced as well, but we don't really get to spend too much time with her as she's locked up, so I'll give my thoughts on her in a bit. We also get a lot of world building in this case, like with the DL6 incident, which is important, and how Mia's mother is connected to it, and learning about spirit mediums in general. I wasn't expecting such a supernatural element in this series, but it is very relevant in the entire game. I wasn't sure how I felt about it, but I quickly came around to being okay with it and actually enjoying the spirit medium stuff. You just have to accept that Phoenix Wright is a very over-the-top game. I mean, just look at some of these characters and you can tell. However, despite having a more lighthearted and goofy tone, it can still get serious and dark with certain subjects and not have it feel out of place, which is impressive to do. The antagonists in this case were also pretty good, with April May and Red White. Taking them down was fun, and I love their breakdowns. Just to point out quickly, all the breakdowns in this game are hilarious, and having some egotistical villains start to feel the fear of God is fantastic. But yeah, this case was pretty good and enjoyable, but I can still feel the narrative trying to find its footing. But as we'll see with the next case, Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney will find its stride. The next case we are tackling is Turnabout Samurai, which is where Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney is in high gear. I love this case as I feel this is the full culmination that the first two cases set up. This is the first partnership case with Maya, and we see more and more how her and Phoenix engage with each other and their charming dynamic. The opening cutscene finally doesn't spoil anything, but shows the theme of the case with the Steel Samurai show. Will Powers is being tried for the murder of his co-star, and Maya is ready to defend him no matter what. They gave Maya a charming quirk with her obsession with the TV show, and she mainly acts like an airhead, with Phoenix acting like an older brother and having to reel her into reality. Their interactions are written with a lot of this personality, and I never found Maya to get too over the top or too annoying, but found myself liking her more and more as a character. Also, examining things in the background is far more enjoyable, since it's usually Maya being excited about the object in some way, and Phoenix just being like, bruh. It's funny and cute. There's plenty of memorable characters in this chapter as well, like with the teddy bear Will Powers, who, for looking like a manly man, is pretty timid and insecure. And then the lady who was lovable to hate, Wendy Olbag. The Redditor, Sal Manella, and Dee Vasquez, who is just the word nonchalant if it was a character. The twist in this case, in my opinion, was great and not something I was expecting. Getting to the end of the case, where Phoenix realized that the victim, Jack Hammer, was actually killed out of self-defense was great. It was cool for this case to be written where the bad guy was the victim, not that Dee Vasquez and Sal are innocent in any way. This case made me just really start to appreciate Edgeworth as a character as well, and make me actually like him. I always thought before that I played the Phoenix Wright games that Phoenix and Edgeworth were arch enemies, but that's not really the direction they went with these two at all. When Edgeworth helped Phoenix figure out the next step to take was really a great moment. It's safe to say that this case made me a Phoenix Wright fan and got me addicted. Turnabout Goodbyes is amazing. That's it. That's all I have to say. This is the conclusion to the game. Well, sort of. What I love about this case is that it ties everything we experienced in the game, how it all led up to this case. The DL6 incident is finally revealed in its entirety, how Edgeworth and Larry made Phoenix into the person he is today, and the reveal with Larry being the thief, but making amends by paying back Edgeworth. It really shows a genuine side to Larry, which I appreciated. It was funny that Edgeworth told Phoenix about if something smells is usually the bust line, like Phoenix wasn't mentioning that the whole game. Just the overall storytelling in this case is excellently done and well crafted. I wasn't expecting for us to learn more about the DL6 incident, but it's tied in perfectly into the narrative. It also served as great character development and growth from Edgeworth. His character truly shines in this case and solidifies him as one of my favorites. Him dealing with the grief of losing his father and straying from a defense attorney path due to what he believes to be his father's killer getting off is tragic, and you really feel and understand his motives and ideals. Then, once confronted with the possibility of him being his father's killer, he is heartbroken and wants to atone for his crime. Phoenix fighting back against his testimony to prove his innocence really shows the type of friendship they have. They aren't enemies, but friends and true rivals. Phoenix trusts Edgeworth and knows something isn't right. I also enjoyed the mystery element in this case with Gertie and how it doesn't really feel like it should fit with what's going on with the murder in DL6, but it comes together nicely. When you figure out that the true killer is Von Karma, it all comes together and it's satisfying to see this cold and harsh man start to sweat. Taking him down on the last possible day that the case can be open is poetic and truly brings this game to a great conclusion. The writers just knew they were cooking with this. And then when we had to present the metal detector to prove the bullet was in his shoulder, and the crash out, it's certainly just one to remember. Something to take note with the character work of Von Karma is his mannerisms are similar to what we see in Edgeworth do, showing that Edgeworth picked up on his quirks from stuttering under him. It's subtle storytelling to show their connection, which I enjoyed. As I mentioned earlier, this was the final case in the game as everything is wrapped in a beautiful ending. Like I said, I love this moment where Lolo takes a picture of the game and we see Maya there as well. We also get a teary goodbye with Phoenix and Maya, which also makes you feel warm inside. You really felt the bond that grew between these two, as it felt natural and not forced. We then get a whole end credit scene where we see every character talk about what are they up to. And with that, marks the end of Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney. Rise from the Ashes is the 5th case that was made when the original Phoenix Wright game was remade for the DS. So essentially, the best way to think about this case is like another game, like Phoenix Wright 1.5. It was made to really connect the game with the next title in this series. But I went into this case without this context, and I thought it would be around the length of the other cases. Boy, was I wrong. This case lasts around as long as the prior 4 cases combined. This case lasts so long, and your court record gets filled to the brim with evidence, which I heard to be the most amount of evidence you'll ever collect in the whole series. I started to get fatigued with this case during my playthrough, due to me not knowing it would be so long. I kept thinking it was going to end soon just for it to keep going. But even with it being added for the remake, I still think it drags on for a little too long. Nonetheless, this is definitely one of my favorite cases in the whole game, as it has some of the best moments ever. It's really hard to choose between Turnabout Goodbye and Rise from the Ashes, but I think Rise from the Ashes takes the edge. I love the new gameplay mechanic in this game with being able to examine evidence from the 3D model. It has such a fun layer to looking at evidence rather than simply just looking at the text below. We also get a lot of new characters introduced to this case, like with the Sky Sisters, Jake Marshall, Angel Star, and Damon Grant. All the characters introduced for this case are well written and enjoyable. Maybe except for Officer Meekins. I do enjoy his character, and his cross-examination is one of the best moments in the game. Like looking at the footage of the evidence room with the Blue Badger was so much fun. But I don't know, I feel like he's out of place in the Phoenix Wright world. But who knows, that might just be me. Since Maya is off training, she won't be joining us for this case, so instead we get Emma Skye, who I found to be a solid replacement as a sidekick. She acts pretty similar to Maya, but is different enough to where she acts like her own character. I think it's so funny how ditchy she is, while also having pretty good knowledge with forensics. Lady Skye is also great, and her character development is one of the best. Her resolution at the end of the game, where she could finally smile and move on from the past, and that final picture showing 2 sisters hugging, got this boy right here feeling something. Jake Marshall and Angel Star have such a powerful motivation and conviction that I kind of respect them. I mean, from their point of view, they know something is fishy with the SL9 case. It was sad learning that Jake just wanted the truth about his brother's death and couldn't come to terms with the fake story. But of course, the true star of this show is Damon Gant. The big bad of this case is just an outright deplorable person. He steals the show as a fantastic villain. I will say he's pretty obviously the villain pretty soon in the case, but it didn't really take away from the story at all. Final day of the trial, Phoenix and Edgeworth figure out that Gant is the mastermind behind Goodman and Neil Marshall's death, and then teaming up to take him down during the trial was awesome. It felt like a perfect climax to the game, having the defense and prosecution united against corruption and deal justice to Gant. His crash shot is one of the best, by the way. But yeah, this case is definitely top tier, and despite dragging on, it still takes the cake as the best case in Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney. With that marks the end of this review. The game succeeded in getting me hooked to the series and wanted to play it more and more. I wasn't a fan of Phoenix Wright before, but that's all changed. I want to keep diving into the series and see what comes next. I'm excited for the next game, Justice for All, and I hope the series continues to elevate its characters and storytelling. But we'll have to wait and see if it can live up to my enjoyment of this one. If you enjoyed watching this review, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. If you object to anything I said, let me know in the comments, as I'm curious to hear other people's opinions for this game. If you agree or disagree, I want to say it all. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video where I tackle Ace Attorney, Justice for All. Thanks for watching.